Dolphins are conscious breathers. They cannot, if they do not purposely decide to take a breath, they will die. They have no automatic breathing system in them at all. And so they don't sleep like we sleep. In fact, they don't sleep. They have a different mechanism, which I guess I'll describe real quickly right now. When we go to sleep at night, first of all, we are either usually on the left side or the right side. It's hardly anybody's got both sides going on at once. We're usually on one side or the other, and of that side, we are maybe 5 or 10% of that side is functioning. 100% of one side and about 90% of the other side is unconscious. It's not functioning. So I mean, we're almost an unconscious being. But we're even more than that from a dolphin perspective, because what they do is they come into a circle, like I talked about with the whales when they go to sleep. They all point their noses together, floating on the surface, and they begin to rotate. And I'm not sure which way they rotate, actually. They begin to rotate around, and you said they rotate counterclockwise? Is that what you said?
Most of the time
counterclockwise. Okay. And they start rotating counterclockwise. And then at one point, one of them takes a breath and goes in the water. And then followed by the next one, followed by the next one, forming this helical pattern as they're going down into the water. In other words, copying where they would be on the top of the circle as they keep moving down into the water. But as they take this breath and go down in, the dolphins have both sides of their brain on 100%. So even though they've got a brain that's about 350 grams bigger than ours, it's really a lot bigger than ours because they got the whole thing on. We're only functioning, we got a 1,500 gram brain, and that's functioning on about, I don't know, 30 grams or something. It's not very much. And so they start coming down in here. They turn off one side of their brain and leave the other side on. That's called sleep. And so they come down here, and then when they either get to the bottom or when they get back to the top, I don't know from the research that I read, I can't remember anymore. But when they get down at the bottom, where they turn this off, I don't know. They then start coming back up. As the other ones are coming down, they're coming back up, forming a double helical pattern. Coming back up until they match back up in the circle, and when they get to the top, let's say it's up there, they switch sides of the brain. And come down and take it so that the other side can rest. It allows one side to rest with every other breath. It's a very slow delta, you would say. If you know how delta and theta work. Delta's sleeping state is really, we're just going back and forth, turning off one side of our brain, turning on the other, but it's at a rate about like that. That's what we're doing when we're asleep. And they're just doing it much slower. And so when a dolphin looks at a human being, we're all sleeping because we have one side of our brain turned off. We're not fully turned on beings. Okay, here we go, more school. We ended up with these, we were working with the Fibonacci sequence before. Well, there are two, just as there are two primary shapes, the cube and the sphere, there are two primary mathematical sequences that are primary to life, that move all throughout life. One of them we saw was the Fibonacci. You saw us all in the bone structures and the shape of things and stuff all over the place. But there's another one. There's another one that's just as important. It's just as important as mommy is to daddy. Because the Fibonacci one is female. It's the female cycle. But there's a male one that's also equally important. It's called the binary sequence. The binary sequence, instead of adding the last number to the last number, it's doubling the last number. So if you had 3, it starts out 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. Just like the mitosis of cell division that we were talking about. That's the binary sequence. But it's really all over the place. And so I want to look at it for a moment. This is it here. And so it goes like this. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, etc. Now at the end of 10, in terms of mitosis or cell division, at the end of 10 divisions, you have 512 cells. And that happens to be what the apple is. When we see the apple, that's how many cells are in the apple, from everything that I've learned about it anyway. Now there's 2 facts that we know. One of them is that there are approximately 10 to the 14th cells in the average human body. And I got one too many zeros on here. But it's hundreds, thousands, millions, billions, trillions. There's about 100 trillion cells in the average human body. And if you talk to one doctor, he'll tell you a little more. And if you talk to another one, they'll tell you a little less. But there's a lot of cells in the human body. And another little fact, and there's lots of these facts, but this is another one. Every second of your life, 2.5 million red blood cells die and have to be replaced. Every second. I mean, that's a lot of red blood cells, 2.5 million. It would take you about 3 months just to count to 2.5 million. Day and night. So, I mean, it's a lot. And yet the only way that both of those things can be satisfied, in other words, the way the body can be created and then maintained, is only through mitosis, which is cell division. And so at the end of 10 of these, you've got 512 cells. And you just look at this and you think, well, boy, it better start going fast, because we've got a lot of work to do here. And it just doesn't seem possible at this point. But watch the thing about the binary sequence, and those of you who studied mathematics realize it has a almost magical quality. It has an almost impossible quality about it. At 512 cells, when it goes to the 11th mitosis division, it's at 1,024. And by the end of 10 more, it's at over 500,000. They went from 512 to 500,000, and from 10 to 20. And when it goes for 10 more cell divisions, it goes up to 530 million at the end of 30. And according to Anna C. Pye and Helen Marcus Roberts in their books, Genetics and Its Genetics and Its Concepts and Implications, Freudian slips. It takes exactly and only 46 mitotic cell divisions to create an adult. 46 times. That's a really interesting number, because that's the number of chromosomes we have. And it's also 1/2 the number of stable elements that we have in the environment. And it's just amazing that it could be done in 46 times. It takes 9 months to do it, but in 46 times it creates the whole process. Actually, it must be more than 9 months. I don't know when they figure there's an adult. I haven't read the details on that whole thing yet. The next thing I want to show about this is not having to do with organic structure, but computers. Us humans chose the binary sequence to create our computer structures, and which is kind of wise in a way, because it's one of the living structures, one of the living sequences. And if we had not chosen that one, it would not have been possible, really. And I would like to just very quickly tell you how a computer works, even though most of you know how it works. There's probably somebody here who maybe don't know that. And it's real simple. It's just, you got some light switches in there, called computer chips. You can turn them off or you can turn them on. And say you have, you got a real simple computer. You only have 5 computer chips in it, a few little places in there. And those chips are given names of 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16. So you got 5 of them, and that's their names. That's their numerical value. Well, by turning off or on any sequence of those 5 chips, you can come up with every number between 1 and 16. In other words, if you turn on the first chip that's called 1, you get 1. If you turn on the second chip called 2, you get 2. If you turn on both of those chips, you get 3. Okay? If you turn on this one, you get 4. You get, that's the 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 and 1 is 5. 4 and 2 is 6. 4, 2, and 1 is 7. And then you have 8. And 8 and 1 is 9. 8 and 1 is 9. 8 and 2 is 10. 8 and 2 and 1 is 11. 8 and 4 is 12. 8 and 4 and 1 is 13. 8 and 4 and 2 is 14. And 8 and 4 and 2 and 1 is 15. And then you have 16. So you can get every number in between there. If you add one more computer chip and you call it 32, then you can get every number between 1 and 32. If you add one more computer chip and you call it 64, you can get every number between 1 and 64. If you have a computer that has 46 chips in it, you can get every number between 1 and 100 trillion, which is 46 on and offs. I begin to see this binary sequence in life over and over and over again. It just keeps repeating it, not just in the mitosis, but it's all over the place in all kinds of ways. And at one point I realized that we had mommy and daddy sequences here. And so I suspected, since there is always a geometrical nature behind numbers, I'll just throw something out here, by the way. Most scientists believe that numbers, or mathematics, is the hidden language behind their science. I don't agree with that. I say that geometry is the hidden shape underneath all numbers that generates the numbers that is behind the science. And so for me, when I see all these numbers, I realize there's got to be a shape underneath it that has generated the two sequences. And or maybe one shape that generated one and one shape that generated the other. But because they appeared to be mommy and daddy to me, I highly intuited that there must be some kind of geometrical form or shape or pattern that tied the two together. And I looked for years on it and thought about it for years and years and years and never could find it. And then one day I was going through one of my son's 6th grade mathematical books, and I was just looking at it and checking up on things and seeing how stuff works. And as I was going through there, I came across something, and I really am sorry, whoever wrote this book. I don't remember their name. I would like to give them credit, but I don't know. I don't even have the book anymore. But he did something in there that he actually didn't know what he did. He did something really incredible and was unconscious that he had done it. But the guy had taken a particular geometrical form and plotted a logarithmic spiral on it, and when he did, he simultaneously came up with both the two sequences, the Fibonacci and the binary sequence. And he didn't even know he had done that. He was talking about something totally different. But this is what happened. This was the geometrical form that he was working with. It's called a polar graph, which is a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional form, a sphere. It's how to plot from a sphere onto a two-dimensional form. It makes perfect sense now that I think about what it is. It's one of the sacred shapes going from three to two-dimensional levels. And the other thing is about this, I always thought this was, when I started thinking about this, I thought this was something that maybe the Navy came up with, or Army, or something that was relatively new. And I'm beginning to find out that the polar graph goes all the way back as far as Egypt. That they had maps of the Earth going all the way back using a system similar to this. And so this is old, it's ancient. So this is how we usually see a polar graph, which is there will be a circle in the middle, and whatever the radii of that circle is, they'll come out, that disc, that will become your yardstick, and you call that 1. And then you just come out that far to the next circle, and you keep coming out that distance to create all your circles. And then there are 36 lines equally spaced, which create your 360 degrees. Of course, even everything in here is not arbitrary. 360 degrees isn't arbitrary. When you know the geometries, there's all reasons why it's all in there, the more you get into this. But anyway, this was the shape, and what this man did was, he took this middle sphere in here, he plotted a logarithmic spiral. As it turns out, the logarithmic spiral is the creator or the key between both of those other two the Fibonacci and the binary sequence. And so he plotted one around here. He started at 0 degrees, and he plotted this spiral around until it came around one time back to 0 degrees, like this. Started here, and he plotted this spiral, logarithmic spiral, around one time. Now, he was only concerned where the spiral crossed the degree marks, and the system that he used to calculate this was using the central circle as your measuring stick of 1. And say you wanted to know where this point was, he would come here and he'd go. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4.5 approximately radii. You see how that is? This one over here would be 1, 2.8 radii approximately. But you could calculate this pretty accurately. Well, look at the mathematics. This is from 0 to 360 degrees. At 0 degrees, it is exactly 1, because it's starting right on the surface of the planet. And at 120 degrees, it keeps going up and up and up and up, but at 120 degrees, it exactly crosses it at 2. And then over here, at 240 degrees, it just perfectly goes over at 4. And then, at 360 degrees, it returns exactly at 8. That's 1, 2, 4, 8. Binary sequence. At the same moment, it goes 1, 2, and also at 190 degrees, it crosses exactly at 3. And 280 degrees, exactly at 5. 360 degrees, exactly at 8. 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Fibonacci sequence. Both unfolding from this particular pattern. And I went, wow! And I have to admit a defect in my personality here right now. I tend to, when I see things like this, I will check one thing out, and then I just know that it's true for the rest of it, so I go on. And I've never finished this work. I've only looked at the binary sequence of 1, 2, 4, 8, and I've never checked out what it means in terms of the geometries behind the Fibonacci sequence. I'm not real interested, but it could be very important to somebody's work here. I don't know. If you want to do that, you can go ahead and do it. So I'm going to look only at the binary sequence right now. But here's what that means geometrically. Those points of 0, 120, 240, and 0 form an equilateral triangle around the center. Geometrically, this is a binary sequence. It's more than just an equilateral triangle, because you are now literally looking at a tetrahedron, because the lines are all there. There's a line coming to the center, and you are looking at a two-dimensional view of a tetrahedron. So realize that as we start to work here. Inscribed perfectly in a sphere. However, I'm going to change this a little bit. There's another image in here, and that image is an equilateral triangle with a line down the middle. See this line here? That's another image that's in there. Well, there was another man, his name was Keith Kirchlow, and who's done a lot of real incredible work. You can check out his work too. It's very mental, but it's very good. And Keith just happened, and I don't know how he ever figured it out, it was just pure luck. He happened to find out, stumble upon, I think would be the best word, that if you had an equilateral triangle with a line down the middle, that an incredible, unique phenomena took place. He did not realize it was really a tetrahedron. He found out that if you took the line that was in the middle and you measured, you had to use it, this is the flaw in his system, you had to measure with a measuring stick. As soon as you're ever using, anytime you have to use a ruler, then you're not at the core. Go deeper. Because you should never have to measure anything. You should be able to figure it all out with nothing but a compass and just a straight edge. And all your measuring should be automatically determined by the lines, which I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. But anyway, he had to measure from here to find the middle. Once he found the middle, you draw a line straight up at 90 degrees and then bring it down to this corner. Where it crosses, you make another one straight up and down to this corner. And you could keep doing that, obviously. And he discovers something, that this line, this middle line, the lengths of these lines that are broken up inside of there do something rather remarkable. This is his writing. It says, continuing in this way, meaning this little pattern that he made, each successive proportion will be the harmonic mean between the previous proportion and the total length. Same kind of thing that we were doing with A over B and for the phi ratio. And all of these proportions will be musically significant. 1/2 being the octave, meaning the length of this to the length of this is equivalent proportionately to the octave. 2/3 being the fifth, 4/5 being the major third, 8/9 being the major tone, and 16/17 being the half tone. It's perfect musical proportions. So he tried it another way, and he came down here and tried another pattern. And the same thing came out. He came out with 1/7, 1/4, 2/5, 4/7, 8/11, and 16/19, and all those were musical proportions. But there are musical notes associated with those proportions. And he sort of went wow, and I went really wow, because I was seeing the other side of the whole thing that was going on there. So look at this. Here's the original one. To find the middle, you don't have to measure. Just draw a line from there to the center. It will come up, come down, and precisely break this in half to the middle. So the middle point is the octave. And so then I can automatically create the rest of the pattern that he created, but without any measuring stick. And in fact, even the external sphere is aligned with what happens in the middle, what happens off of here. We have done a lot of research, and what we believe now is that you can draw a line from any one of these three corners to any space inside of here. Say that you pick that one right there. You draw a line up to that one and then down, and make you mess with your patterns. You'll come up with all the musical proportions there are, period and end. All the harmonics of music that exist. No matter what scales or types of scales you want to use, they will all be there. And we should be able to prove this soon, which will mean that the harmonics of music are these proportions that are located in the simplest shape in existence, a tetrahedron. Even remember we have the 8 notes and 5 notes creating the chromatic scale, which have 12 divisions in it. And the divisions along each one of these sides is 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's 12 spaces on each one of these sides. while I was studying this and understanding how sound was a function of a tetrahedron, someone sent me a postcard. It was Janice Dolphin. She's a good person. She sent me a postcard, and which happened to be a polar graph with reflective surfaces on it. How light reflects off of a polar graph. And I mean, it was right while I was in the midst of this, so I was sitting there going, wow, wow, wow. Oh, thanks for the postcard. Wow, wow. I couldn't believe it. It was perfect timing. So this is a polar graph, and this is how light reflects off of a polar graph. With logarithmic spirals. And you can see it happening. And I was just like overwhelmed. I mean, for me it was very powerful. And you can actually see that the white light is exactly 180, and right at 90 degrees you can see the blackening, the black light spirals that come out of it. And we have seen that somewhere else before. You can just look at it. We have the same energy fields around us, of course. You're just looking at it on a major level. As above, so below. Everything is the same. Now there's another point I want to make right now before I go on. Coming back to this one. You remember before when I said that when you're looking at these geometries, that the lines that are on here are not just lines on a page, but they're spirit moving through nothing. And that they're maps. Well, there's another statement I'd like to make about it, and that is that, though I made it once before, but I want to kind of make it come home quicker or harder, and that is that for every line that's on a page, it has an experiential aspect to it. It's not just arbitrary, it's not just a move. Every time spirit moves, there is a corresponding relationship into the outer world that is associated with it. In every single case. There's no exceptions. In this case, we're talking about harmonics of music. And so, you could be looking at that, or you could be thinking about this, which is, or what this represents, or musical notes, and they are really interrelated. There's really no difference. This strikes you primarily into your left brain. This comes into your right brain. If you add right now and you go 1 plus 1 is 2 and 2 plus 2 is 4, you're functioning from your left brain. If you hum and you go, you just switched over to your right brain. As long as you don't put any words or anything into it. If you listen to music without words, it goes to your right brain. And so, what I'd like to do, just for a moment, just for 1 minute or so, is I'm just going to play some music. Hopefully it's tuned. I'm just going to play this flute. It's a little Sioux Indian flute, Lakota Indian flute. And I'll play just a little bit of Indian music. And while I am, you might realize that the sounds you are hearing and the musical significance of the notes that you're hearing is exactly the same thing up there, only there it's in geometry rather than in what's coming into your right brain through experience. So let's try this for a moment. but one's the same as the other one. It's a lot easier to take this one in, I imagine, but that's really the same thing. If you get this, then you understand what sacred geometry is about. Same way with all the sine wave signatures that are coming up on computers and everything. They have direct relationships into human life, which we're discovering. She's discovering how they relate to different minerals and everything in the body. It all has meaning. So if you plot two spirals, like nature shows, 180 degrees off, what you get is two equilateral triangles, which of course are really two tetrahedrons, which is a star tetrahedron inscribed perfectly in a sphere. Precisely, mathematically, has been a star tetrahedron inscribed in a sphere, which is the key to the Merkaba, to interdimensional time-space, and the harmonics. There is a star that will fit perfectly inside of that one, and there is a sphere that will fit perfectly inside of the original hexagon. And if you were to take that one that fits inside of there and place it on each one of these points all the way around there, what you would have is the fruit of life. And so, remember, that's what one of the sacred forms. We first showed one of the how by connecting all the centers together, we came up with the sacred shapes that were the basis of structure in the reality. But by not connecting the centers together like we did here, but rather by concentric circles that are formed off of the patterns, and by radial lines that come out from the center, forming the polar graph, we came up with all this information that we had just looked at. The relationship of sound and light and shape and things that were formed through this, the harmonics of music and sound, were all. So I could have done it the other way around. I could reverse all the slides and say, okay, we're starting with here and now we're going to go over the other way. That isn't how I got it, so that's how I gave it to you. And so what you've just seen is another one of the informational systems, another way of superimposing male energy over the female energy, radial lines coming out. And of course, I've just scratched the surface just a little tiny bit. I mean, we did not go into depth of what it means, what the harmonics of sound means relative to one of these things. We haven't, or light or anything else. We haven't deeply gone into it. We've just shown the relationship. And there probably are, I believe, 10 other sequences that are associated with this. This is my belief. 10 and possibly 11 that are associated with it, and I haven't even looked into those areas either, because I'm just looking for I'm just skimming along the surface here is all we're doing.